My lips are naked. In my last video, I also started it by putting on lip gloss, but what you didn't know was that that lip gloss stank. And it took everything in me to just pretend that everything was fine, but it was definitely expired. Anyway, it's still 2024, believe it or not, but we're not done with 2023. We still have a lot of end of year content to get through, and today we're talking about everything that I watched in December. I did do a few of these on live stream, but if you're a Dear Cult member, then you know that many of you had spoken. We're bringing this back to video form because it seems to be what most people prefer. Also, yeah, if you're new here and one of your New Year's resolutions was to join a cult, then you've come to the right place. I am Satan's favorite daughter, the beloved Antichrist, at your service. This here is my own online virtual cult. If you'd like to join, all you have to do is click subscribe. Pretty much all we do in our cult meetings is just talk about horror movies. Very rarely am I cutting the neck of a goat or, you know, prying off somebody's toenails. Generally good vibes all around. If you don't believe me, then just take a gander at the comments, okay? I promise we're not gonna bite all the time. Anyway, if you're new here, the way that I structure these monthly recaps is that I start with all the TV shows that I watched in the month. Then I go through all the non-horror movies of the month, so we have a lot of Christmas stuff to talk about, but I'll try not to dwell on that because we want to get into the meat of this video, which is the horror. So after non-horror, I get into my horror rewatches of the month, and then I get into all my new watches of old horror, stuff that I'm catching up on. Then finally, I get into all of the new releases that I watched during the month. Yes, I have a horror Instagram, I have Twitter, I have a Patreon, I have a physical media / vlog channel, and yes, I'm fundraising for my next short horror film. Oh my gosh, you ask so many questions, but everything that you need to know is all linked in the description box below. So let's get into all the TV shows that I watched in December. I'm still watching Buffy. Yes, still working on this. I'm still very early into season 2. I really only throw it on every now and then because it's kind of rare that I get sucked into the story of an episode. When I do get into it, I am into it, but it's not a favorite. And then I also finished the first season of Goosebumps that was just recently released to both Hulu and Disney+. It ended bad. I don't know. It ended poorly. It wasn't good. I really don't understand what they're trying to do with that show anymore. In the beginning, I thought I did because it was a fresh take on these old concepts, and as a fan, I felt serviced while also feeling like I was getting something new. I thought Justin Long was great, and I still do, but the story got so messy. It got so weird and so convoluted, and also it was very dark. Like, I don't really understand the target audience of the show anymore because children would probably be able to forgive how over the top and ridiculous the plot ended up being, but then on the same hand, like, it just seemed way too dark for kids, you know, under the age of 13 maybe. Like, probably a teenage show? The Goosebumpsification of Riverdale, one might say. But I don't know, and I'm not sure that I'm gonna be seated for season 2. I finally finished Sex Education though, season 4, and to the naysayers, I say how dare you. I heard really bad things about it, and so I kind of put off watching it, but also because I don't usually have Netflix at my disposal, I wait and I watch it at my parents' house like any sane person who doesn't want to pay the extra bill. And it was so good. I thought that it was actually a really good send-off for all these characters that I love. I'm glad that they're not pushing it because so many of the actors, you know, wanted to leave the show after the 4th season. I did feel the absence of a few of the characters, but overall, it was pretty much more than I could ask for. The first episode of the season was really bad though, and I was worried, but then as soon as I got to the second episode and got into it, then it was fine. I also watched the Paramount Plus original School Spirits. This was a strange show, but I was really into it. It unfortunately was just not good enough for me to want to put hope into it that a second season would be good, but the first season was good. I wish that it was just a limited series, but they kind of drop a bomb on you in the last episode, and I was like, oh god. If they're giving me this cliffhanger and then I'm not gonna get a second season, I'm gonna be pissed. Because Paramount Plus, what did they do to iCarly? What did they do to iCarly? Anyways, don't piss me off. They had already renewed it for a second season, luckily, so I think that's coming to us probably in like 2025, I would imagine. It's like a 3-star show. They want to be doing things to your emotions that they just don't pull off, but the storyline is entertaining enough and it's short enough that you're like, whatever, I'm still gonna watch it. Especially because there's some really annoying, like, kind of tropish characters. There's like the tragic gay, and I'm like, why do we the gays always have to be some sort of tragedy? It was sweet, like, it was still sweet, and like, it's real, because I guess being gay is kind of tragic. I see so many pretty girls, and I'm like, does that make sense? If it didn't, then maybe you're straight. Then there's also this other, like, Daria-esque character. She's the dark one, she's the weird girl. I believe that that trope should begin and end with Wednesday Addams, with April from Parks and Rec wedged in there. She's okay too. I love a weird mean girl. I love that. She is me. But she's just so basic these days. You know what I mean? They also gave her this gimmick where she's always sucking on lollipops, and I forget what she calls the other characters, like pussy cake or something. She's always like, I'm saying something mean and witty. She annoyed me. Also, the lead of the show, I forget her name, Peyton something. I get really stuck on actor quirks, and one of hers is that she's constantly kind of like pouting. So she kind of always looks like this. And that's on me because that type of thing distracts me. Maybe it wouldn't for you. But then it also stars that one guy who was in Thanksgiving. He plays such a jackass in Thanksgiving, and then in this show, he's like this total golden retriever 80s jock, and he's adorable. I want this year to like be his moment. I want his star to shoot across the sky. So let's make that happen, please and thank you. I can recommend it. It's streaming on Netflix now, which is really, really jarring to like play the show, and then it's like a Paramount Plus original at the beginning of it. But anyways, then I also finally finished season 7 of Queer Eye. Can you tell that I was home recently and binging Netflix? It was excellent, babes. I love New Orleans. It was great. Obviously another amazing season. That show never misses. So truly nothing to say there. Let's move on to all the non-horror movies I watched this month. Last month. It's 2024 now. Get it together, haunted hippie. Sorry, I'm shooting this at like 8:30 p.m. Usually I like to shoot my videos in the morning because right now I'm not all the way here. Anyways, let's blow through all the holiday movies that I watched because I feel like this is gonna be kind of annoying. If I remember to, I'll try to put like a timestamp in between the segments where you can like skip past the holiday stuff. Office Christmas Party was really, really bad. The only thing good about that movie was Jennifer Aniston, just point blank period, that's all. It's a Wonderful Life was not for me. I talked about that in my review of It's a Wonderful Knife, and just as I suspected, the boomers were mad at me, and I don't play with that. I muted all of them. I didn't like it. Suck my butt. Somebody in the comments though said something really funny because like they liked the movie, but then they also were able to admit that George Bailey was kind of a lame character, and they said that he had quote L-Riz, a term which I will be stealing and I will be implementing that into my daily language, so thank you. But it's true, there's like one moment of the movie where he's out on the street with the girl, I don't remember her name, and she's naked because she's like out in front of her house or something and she had a robe on, and then he takes it and she's like in the bushes and she's like, give me my robe back, and he's like, oh no, I don't think I will. Bro. And yet these dumbass boomers are still shocked that someone my age is like, you know, I don't really like that. Oh, I also watched Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, but I talked about this in one of my most recent anti-hauls over on my vlog channel because I decided to get rid of my Blu-ray copy of it because I just didn't like it. And I'll just briefly explain yet again that I don't like comedy shticks where the whole thing is just like, look how annoying this guy is. Isn't that funny that he's just being the worst? I don't find that funny. It's just like, no, I'm in the shoes of this other character who is also annoyed. So I didn't care for it. Oh, I also watched Die Hard. Die Hard is a Christmas movie, and I used to think that it was like a bigger debate, that it was more of like, you know, two warring factions. It's a Christmas movie, it's not a Christmas movie. But then once I got on Letterboxd and, you know, I gave the movie 5 stars and started looking at the other reviews, I saw that everyone was talking about it being a Christmas movie. I then learned that apparently the small faction of people that believe it's not are raving lunatics. Apparently they go super hard in the motherfucking paint about that. Haven't looked into it too much, but would love to hear more. I also rewatched Jim Carrey's How the Grinch Stole Christmas. I still love that movie. And I determined upon this last viewing the funniest line of dialogue that is uttered by Jim Curry. Jim Curry. Steph Curry, Jim Curry, you know, when he's looking through his schedule and he's like, stare into the abyss, solve world hunger, tell no one. That's comedic genius. I don't know if that was in the script or if that was all Jim Carrey, but mwah. Also rewatched The Grinch from 2018, and listen, that movie's got so many haters, and I know that it's because nobody likes Illumination, the animation studio, because they did the Minions or whatever. I like it. I have a good time. Does it feel like it was a short film and all of the plot points were stretched out to an hour and 25 minutes? Yeah, but it's a good time. I still have a good time. Anyway, also rewatched Elf, perfect film, no notes. Rewatched The Santa Claus, not a perfect film, but I still, you know, it was from my childhood, so I can't be too mean about it, but yeah, that movie's not good. I think that does it for all of the holiday movies that I watched, so that actually didn't take as long as I thought it would. Up next in non-horror though would be Dream Scenario, which as soon as I saw the credits roll and it said produced by Ari Aster, everything made sense. He is in his like loser boy era. With this movie and Beau is Afraid, I just like, I don't really know what's going on with him. Dream Scenario follows this professor played by Nick Cage, God bless, who everyone in the world starts having dreams about him, so he becomes like this overnight celebrity. And it started so good. I really liked like the first half, the first two acts of the movie, and then I just firmly believe that they didn't know how to end it because it got super lame, and like you think that it ends about 4 different times, but then it just keeps going. They should have just pinched it off, you know what I mean? I was expecting to really fall in love with the movie, and I don't know if back in the day when I first heard the movie was announced, if I knew that it was produced by Ari Aster, but if I did, like, I probably would have been excited for it. I was super excited for it because it was a weird premise played by Nick Cage, like, you know, our favorite weird boy, but I just feel like it totally fell apart. I don't know what it was trying to do, what it was trying to say about, like, cancel culture or something. I guess that, like, it's bad, but wow, what a fresh hot take that is. I also just think it's so stupid because it just like fundamentally misses the entire point of cancel culture. Like, yeah, there are some rare scenarios where it's like the person is maybe not deserving of being deplatformed or something that dramatic. But then there's also like the James Charles and Shane Dawsons of the world who allegedly are like complete fucking creeps. I don't even have to say alleged with Shane Dawson. He kissed like a 12-year-old or a 16-year-old girl when he was like 27. I'm making up the ages because it doesn't really matter. She was a child and he was an adult. So I don't really know, like there was nothing, I couldn't latch on to anything in this movie. I was like, do you even know what you're trying to say? People have their interpretations of it, but I just feel like that's giving these filmmakers too much grace. Up next would be May December, in which case the hype is all warranted. And to quote one of the top Letterboxd reviews, I don't want to boil this entire movie down to one performance because everyone's fantastic, but Charles Melton, whew, so heartbreaking, so heartbreaking. I saw some people like not understanding his performance. Why is he talking like a kid? Why is he crying like a kid? I don't know, you ever heard of grooming? I just could not believe this was based off of a real life story about this woman that met her husband when he was 13 and they started having an affair. Like, disgusting. Ew. Anyways, hype is real on that one. Also rewatched The Incredibles, perfect film, no notes yet again. Oh, next is a new release though, Leave the World Behind. Again, can you tell I was watching a lot of Netflix? This stars my favorite boy Ethan Hawke, it stars Julia Roberts. They're the leads along with some other pretty heavy hitters, but it's kind of like exactly what it sounds like. These rich people go away on vacation when the owners of the home that they rented show up because some weird stuff is going down in the city. And I guess that's all I'll say if you like to go into movies blind. I saw a lot of people saying that nothing happens in this movie and that it's saying nothing and like what was the point? Dad, I'm looking at you, I'm looking at your Letterboxd review, but a lot of people were seemingly like in agreement with that. I completely disagree because of the way this movie left me reeling. Like, it's not great. I think I gave it 3.5 stars, but I mean the performances are great. I think conceptually it was really interesting because it just kind of got the gears turning of like, well, what if that did actually happen? You see so many people talking about physical media, and after I saw the movie, I was like, yes, I understand why everyone is mentioning that in their reviews. I felt very vindicated, that's all I will say. Overall, I'm giving the movie grace because it low-key made me want to become a prepper. I was also on the fence about collecting vinyl, and now after watching that movie, I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna run that up as soon as I move out of this place. Next up is one one of the other 5-star movies of the month, that would be Past Lives. This movie made me cry for like 30 minutes after the credits rolled. I was crying for like the last 20 minutes of the movie, and then I just didn't stop. That's partially because I'm mentally ill and I'm not good at self-regulation, but it's also because this movie, it was about mourning the lives that could have been. It's about young love and how that typically never works out, but mourning past lives without centering regret. Sometimes we don't regret the choices we made, but that doesn't mean that it's not still hard. It doesn't mean that we don't still mourn what could have been. So heartbreaking, so beautiful. The performance in this, like, if this does not get nominated for Best Picture, and then if it doesn't win, I may commit violent acts. That may have been the best movie that I watched all year. I don't know about my favorite, but maybe the best. Then I finally watched Ocean's 11 for the first time, and I don't care what anyone says about heist movies. I love them. I think they're so much fun. I don't think anyone clowns on this one in particular because it's like loaded with stars and is famously like just a great movie, but I love heist movies in general. I think that they're just so much fun. It was like the fun and surprise rom-com version of Die Hard. Gonna need to watch the rest of the franchise now because I actually had seen Ocean's 8 with like Sandra Bullock and Rihanna and whatnot, but I've never watched the original, so I'm gonna try to run that up soon. Next up is Wonka, but if you are a patron, then you already know that I posted a spoiler-free review of that on Patreon with my dad, so I'm not really gonna get into it here. I think that the movie is both good and bad. I think you could watch the movie and go, wow, that was pretty bad. Or you could watch the movie and go, wow, that was fun and that was sweet and that was whimsical. I think that all of it is true, and I just recommend going to the theater to see which end of the spectrum you fall on. Because I somehow fell on both, so I was like, okay, 3.5 stars, because you know what? I had fun. The kids had fun. We go into a lot more detail over on Patreon, so go subscribe. Second to last in the non-horror category, I know there were a lot of them, but it was the holidays, so I was watching a lot of Christmas stuff. Teen Witch, you can watch this on HBO Max right now. It follows, you guessed it, a teenage girl as she comes into her witchly powers, and it's just, you know, it's just a little coming of age movie. I had a good time with it. I liked it, but I still only gave it 2.5 stars because it just was one of those 80s movies. It stars that woman from Poltergeist, the little lady, and I can never remember her name, but she plays a similar, like, mystical kind of character in this movie. I think it's kind of, you know, it's interesting that she was typecast in that way, but I guess if you looked different in the 80s in Hollywood, they were like, whoa, they're mystical, they're different. She pulls it off though, you know, not a problem. It was cute. Like, I only gave it 2.5 stars. Maybe I wouldn't watch it again, but maybe I would. I don't know. Just check it out. Just check it out. It resonated because, you know, I practice. I'm currently reading this book that's like about witchcraft and the history of depictions of witches and whatnot. So I think that it just kind of fit the moment, you know? Oh, lastly is actually 2 movies. My boyfriend and I finally finished rewatching the Ice Age franchise. So we watched Continental Drift and Collision Course. Continental Drift, I still loved. I was like 4 out of 5 stars. Peter Dinklage singing, the movie randomly becomes a musical and they're pirates. Okay, yeah, sure, whatever. But then Collision Course was really, really bad. And the one thing that I did not see anybody talking about on the Letterboxd reviews was how much sexual innuendo was just littered about this movie. The movie starts with Scrat finding this alien spaceship, and at one point he's literally getting like spanked to hell and back by this like acorn control thing. You kind of had to see it to believe it. I'm sorry. There's just so much like butthole humor. There are multiple moments where characters just like look like they're getting pounded from behind, and then it zooms out and it's like, oh, Granny's just getting a back rub. It's crazy. It's like so much low-hanging weird fruit. Weird, stinky, smelly butthole fruit. So yeah, can't say that I recommend the entire franchise. I love the first 4 movies, and I used to like the 5th one, like when it came out. I guess I just was happy that there was another Ice Age movie. I didn't realize the vitriol that this franchise experiences because I love it. But yeah, that last one can really go. Oh, but then there's also The Adventures of Buck Wild, right? That released last year. I've seen nothing but terrible things. I'm not hopeful for that. But that's also on Disney Plus, so probably not gonna watch it. Anyway, oh my god, it's finally time to get into my horror rewatches. ugh. We do have quite a few more Christmas movies. I'm sorry about that, but this is a very small category. Black Christmas from 2006 and Black Christmas from 74. Of course, I rewatched those. Those are annual watches. There's no question about that. This was the first time that I ever gave Black Christmas from 74 a perfect score. And it's weird because it was my 4th time seeing the movie, but some movies, it's funny how that happens. The more you watch it, the more you love it. And I find that that just doesn't happen with all my faves, which we'll get into that soon. But up next, we have Jack Frost. That movie is so much fun. I think last year, the first time I watched it, I gave it like 1.5 stars, and I was like, yeah, I'm probably never gonna watch that again. But it was so much fun. We watched it for Holidays in Hell week, which Black Christmas was also part of that. And I'm definitely doing that again next year. And we might have to watch that movie again. I don't know. Should it become a tradition? No, there's too many bad Christmas horror movies out there we gotta watch too. But it's so much fun. That one, I don't know if it would be an annual watch for me, but maybe like biannual. Wait, does biannual mean twice a year, or does that mean every other year? I literally don't know. Anyways, last Christmas rewatch would be Santa's Sleigh. This is another one that I highly recommend, and I'm sorry that I'm not giving synopses for these, but like I've just talked about them before on my channel. We even watched some of these together. So go on and catch up on that old content. Last 2 rewatches of the month are dark comedies, the first of which being Tucker and Dale vs. Evil. And I loved it almost as much as I did upon my first viewing, but I had watched it about 11 months prior to rewatching it. So I think it was just like a little bit too soon. I like to give myself breathing room between watches of my favorite movies, and I loved it so much the first time. I just think that when it's that fresh in your mind, it can kind of be a detriment because the way that comedy works is like it has to subvert expectations. It has to be shocking, right? So for me, it's hard to just watch a comedy multiple times in one year because it just won't hit the same. But unfortunately, it also happens even if I do space it out. But if I've just watched it too many times, then the same thing can happen. That kind of happened with a movie that I've long touted as my favorite horror movie of all time, Ready or Not. And I still get the hype. I do. I still gave it 4.5 stars, but I no longer gave it a perfect score. I just realized that some of the comedy in it I didn't find funny anymore, which is fair because I think the first time I saw the movie, I was like 19 or 20 years old. If you couldn't tell, I'm now ancient beyond my years, so I'm above some of that. No, I'm just kidding. I'm fucking 24. But a lot of it just wasn't quite as funny this time around. Granted, though, there are still some moments that I was cackling. Like, I still was having a really good time. Obviously, 4.5 stars. Like, the value did not depreciate that much, but just for a movie that I'd built up in my head for so long and have been saying for so long is like one of my favorites of all time. I don't think it's that. It's still gonna be one of my faves. Like, definitely top tier dark comedy, but it wasn't all that, you know? It wasn't all that. I'll still cherish it forever though, don't worry. Let's now move on to my new watches of old horror, starting with the WNUF Halloween special. This was a funky little weird one, but a super fun time. This is basically like a Halloween news special ripped straight from the 80s. As you can tell, like it's a found footage moment, and you don't get a lot of found footage that looks like this, I guess, besides like the VHS franchise. I thought it was super cool because even though the movie itself bored me just a little bit, and the commercials did get repetitive, I actually didn't really mind that because it reminded me of being a kid and not having the option to pause what you're watching on the TV. So whenever there's an ad break during a Disney Channel original, you just gotta run to the bathroom and hope for the best. That's what it reminded me of. And also, like, I don't know the 80s versions of this, but I remember Billy Mays' OxyClean. His voice, was ringing through the halls throughout my childhood. It just was a very nostalgic kind of moment. And again, for a moment that I did not live through in the 80s, but I love the 80s. You know, if you're a horror fan, you love the 80s and you wish that you lived throughout them. So it brought me back to a past life, if you will. Not great, like I gave it 3 stars, but would recommend, and I absolutely would watch it again. Oh god, there are more holiday movies to talk about. I'm sorry, I forgot that we watched The Mean One and Santa Jaws for my Holidays in Hell week. Both of those were quite disappointing. Santa Jaws was actually more entertaining than I was expecting. The kid who's the lead in it is actually really fun, and I thought that he was doing kind of like an over-the-top fun theatrical job. He actually made the movie a bit more entertaining than it would have been otherwise, I'm sure. But just not good. I can't really say that I recommend either of those because they both just fall way too flat for what they could have been. I mean, Santa Jaws, for crying out loud. He has a magical pen and he draws this shark and then it comes to life. Like, it should be more over the top than that. And The Mean One, for a riff on the Grinch, watch. Like, and when you have David Howard Thornton, it just needs to be better. It needs to have more vibes, you know? So don't really recommend those, especially because I think the Mean one, your only option is to rent it, so don't. Oh, next up is Human Form. This is an interesting little short film that I actually found, I think because of like an Instagram reel. It's basically just like a commentary on the facial surgery trends of places like South Korea and honestly the United States. From what I understand, which is not much because I don't consume a lot of like Korean culture, I've never been, but apparently getting facial surgeries is like very, very normalized over there. I feel like it's getting more so over here, but over there I'm talking like, you know, wealthy families, when a kid turns 16, they get a nose job or, you know, stuff like that. The short film was like an interesting commentary on that, but I don't know, it didn't quite do it for me. It was a little predictable, I guess, because I didn't really feel like it was pushing the conversation anywhere. I didn't really feel like it was saying anything new. If you've never really looked into that, or if you don't live in a society, then it would maybe be a little bit more shocking for you, but I don't know. Definitely worth watching. You can find it on YouTube. And the last new watch of an old horror movie would be Bloody New Year, which we watched again on a live stream for a watch along. And again, oh, this is like one of my least recommended of this entire video. It had such a fun concept and was just like a total Evil Dead ripoff, so it should have been a better time, but I was so bored. I basically talked throughout the entire movie. Like, I barely watched even a second of it because anytime that I would try to like engage myself and actually watch it and figure out what was going on, or even just figure out a character's name, I couldn't because every single scene felt like a different movie. Everything was so disjointed. Like, I just could not get my bearings, and frankly, I didn't want to. It just, the quality was super bad and not in a fun way. It also didn't even take place on New Year's, so how dare they? How dare calling it Bloody New Year? It takes place in the summertime. Ugh, they made a fool out of me. Fool me once and I'll sacrifice you to my father. I'll tell my dad. Anyways, let's get on to what you've all been waiting for, my dear children. Let's talk about all the new releases that I watched in the month of December. Starting with Suitable Flesh. This one I think that I watched on Shudder, and it's starring Barbara Crampton and Judah Lewis, some horror icons. I don't really know how to describe this movie beyond the fact that it is an extremely erotic possession movie, so I feel like your mind could probably wander and take a guess what goes down. It's pretty disturbing, but it is directed by, what's his face, Joe Lynch? I can't remember, but he reviewed it. He reviewed his own movie on Letterboxd, gave it 5 stars. Hold on. Where's my phone? Am I sitting on it? Oh my god. In a way. It was in my pocket. Yeah, Joe Lynch. He also directed the movie Mayhem, which I am obsessed with. I love that movie. But Suitable Flesh wasn't that good. If you have a real big soft spot in your heart for erotic thriller, then I think you'll really like it. That to say, I love Hellraiser. Like, it is one of my top movies of the 80s, and Suitable Flesh didn't quite do it for me. I just loved the performances in it. Everything else about it was kind of To their credit, they did something with possession that I personally hadn't seen, so I was like, okay, you know, you're making me care about a possession story. That's cool, because typically just possessions, exorcisms, I don't care. This was an interesting take on it, and Judah Lewis, someday the world will realize that he is a movie star. We know him from the Babysitter movies. He was in Summer of '84. He was in I See You. I think we're so blessed that he's staying in the genre, but I know that someday he's gonna get snatched. And rightfully so. I feel like Joe Lynch kind of has a talent for discovering people early. Like, you know, Samara Weaving was also in Mayhem. That was back in 2017. Back when a lot of us were not familiar with her game. And Stephen Yeun is in Mayhem, but you know, he was in The Walking Dead. Like, they knew him. Anyway, I loved Barbara Crampton in it so much that I was even like thirsting after her in my Letterboxd review. Can you blame me though? No, because like Barbara Crampton, if you're free on Tuesday, let me know, because that is when I'm free, on Tuesday. So let me know if you want to hang out when I'm free, which is on Tuesday. I think it's definitely worth the watch, but I don't know if you'll fall in love with it. Up next, another one of my absolute top recommendations of the month is Godzilla -1, which you probably already know. Like, if you're a horror fiend and you follow me, you've probably already seen it, because a lot of you guys actually recommended that I go see it, and you guys were the reason that I did. Because I'm not really a Godzilla type person. Like, I've never really explored the franchise much. I do love creature features, but just something about giant monsters monster destroys city, like, I don't know, it just never really interested me that much. But oh my god, was I wrong. This movie combines so many genres. It's definitely a drama through and through, but then also, of course, there is the action and the horror of the monster of Godzilla. It's also a war movie. Like, it's so many different genres, and it all just like blends so seamlessly together. I also fucking sobbed. I cried my eyes out in the movie theater, and then the credits started rolling and I had to like get myself together because the lights came up and then everyone started walking in front of me. I think my favorite thing about the movie was the beautiful way that they sort of reframed Japanese attitudes like post World War II. Not to say they're like rewriting history, but it just seems that like collectively in Japanese society, they're looking back with hindsight and there's a shift in attitude. And it comes through in this movie and it's so beautiful because the lead character was this kamikaze pilot who deserted his mission. That's basically like how the movie starts. And his whole arc, it's just beautiful. It's just beautiful. I gave it 4.5 stars, but then I was talking about it with my friend Tiago, and then I was like, wait, why didn't I give this a perfect rating? And I still don't think that I've gone back and changed it, so I'll get on that. But my god, I mean, there's a reason why it's now, I think, the 3rd highest grossing Japanese film in the United States ever, like of all time. So go get out and see it before it's gone from theaters. I think they're extending the run, but just hustle, get out there. Up next, oh my god, speaking of Tiago, he released a short film called Good Evening. You can find this on YouTube. It is a pretty straightforward home invasion little short film. I said this in my Letterboxd review. Shout out to Tiago for making me care about a home invasion movie. I just from the get-go was not gonna connect with it as much as I could have, as much as other people might, because I just don't like home invasion movies, but he loves them, and I think that you can tell. What I will give him props for, because like we're both new filmmakers, like he's still in film school, and one thing that I feel like new filmmakers do, because like for me, what I do and what I think he's doing is we decide to flex certain muscles with each project because we're brand new, like we're babies. We don't know holistically what we're doing. So for example, in my next short, my goal is to flex the muscle of trying to develop a character, because I haven't really done that before. In Somnum, that was more just trying to create like one scary scene, like a scene that would be pulled out of a feature-length film, kind of. In my next one, I want to actually like demonstrate a character arc. What I think Tiago's focus was on for Good Evening was just making like a rip and death scene. And I'm sorry, like not to spoil it, but that was my favorite part of it. That was my favorite thing that he did in the movie, and I thought that it was so good, and I was like, damn, I hope that I can make a death scene that good someday. Because it's something logistically that seems difficult, especially with the sound design and stuff, which Tiago did all himself. Like he lit it, shot it, edited it, wrote it, like he did everything himself. So yeah, gotta give him props to the homie. But up next we have All Fun and Games, which I was a little bit excited for because it has Natalia Dyer in it, and also my boy Asa Butterfield from Sex Education. But it's so bad. Oh my god, it's so bad. It's about this group of teenagers that live in Salem, and they play a game and they invite a demon into their lives, and it's just, you know, it's the whole generic thing. The movie's only 75 minutes long, and I could not wait for it to be over. I was having a terrible time. I felt like it looked like it was edited in 2004. It very much looked like it was stylistically trying to copy Saw, which is so weird because even Saw, the franchise itself, has 100% moved on from that whole aesthetic. See Saw X. And Asa Butterfield, I know him as Otis from Sex Education, as this sweet, you know, kind of dumbass idiot. So to see him in this movie and be possessed and what I was like, you know what, I'm good. It was really, really bad. It was terrible. Luckily, the last few new releases I want to talk about were not. The Sacrifice Game, you can find that on Shudder, and this one was like a 3-star movie to me, you know, definitely it was entertaining and worth watching. I haven't seen The Holdovers, but from what I understand, this movie is basically just like the horror version of that. These girls get left behind at their boarding school over the holidays, and then this group of people come and they start stirring up all kinds of trouble for them. I thought it was fun. There was a turn in the movie that I wasn't expecting, but now I feel kind of dumb because I saw some people calling it predictable, so I don't know what the truth is about that. You'd have to watch it for yourself. I was very entertained by the movie. It wasn't one of those movies where I feel the need to, like, you know, play a game of solitaire in the middle of it or something just to pass the time. I was engrossed. I don't think I picked up my phone at all. Like, I was really entertained. I liked it stylistically, the fact that it's set in the 70s. I thought that was pretty cool, but it does have this really, really excellent opening scene that I think is done all in a oneer, and then the rest of the movie movie just like never quite lives up to that energy again. Besides, like I said, there is kind of like a fun twist, but that was kind of it. Also, I guess that's technically a holiday movie, but it didn't really have that vibe at all. Plays into the plot a teensy tiny bit. It sets the stage, but it doesn't really have anything to do with it. So I would actually push back against that being a Christmas film. I recommend it. If you have Shudder, definitely throw it on. And if you have Shudder, you also need to throw on Birth/Rebirth. This was the last horror release of 2023 that I wanted to watch before the year was up, and I'm so happy with that choice. It was phenomenal. It was so good. I highly recommend, especially for our two leads, but also just thematically, there are so many different layers to unpack with that film. I'm not going to give you a synopsis. You might have noticed that, but it's because I think you should go into this movie as blind as you can. That's what I did. I watched it with my dad, people of two very different generations, but we are coming together on Patreon to do a full spoiler-filled review of the movie. The first like 5 minutes I think are going to be spoiler-free, but then we ended up talking for almost 40 minutes about that movie. There was just so much to get into. It kept pouring out of us because he would say one thing and then I'd be like, oh my god, yeah, wait, no, and then that makes me think about this, and then he would go off, and like we had a really good back and forth. Like, it's such a thought-provoking, wonderful film, and I'm so happy that we are closing this video off with another one of the best movies that I watched in the month of December. I also don't want to get too much into all these new releases because my very next video is ranking every 2023 horror release that I watched. So of course I'll be getting into more detail there and talking more about my ratings and all of that. So if you're new here and you haven't clicked subscribe, why don't you go ahead and do that? Stick around, it'll be a good video. I'll also be reacting to all your unpopular 2023 horror opinions next week. That should be a very juicy one because it was kind of a rickety year for horror. I've already mentioned the Patreon a bunch throughout this video, but it is true I would not be able to do all of this without them. We love them so much. In return, like I mentioned, I give them a ton of bonus content. They get a bonus video or two every single week. You'll stay the most up to date with my content over on my horror Instagram, so again, like I said, everything is linked down below. More than anything, I just hope that you enjoyed this video and that I catch you in the next one. Bye!